Philadelphia street litter and single-use plastic bags. We want to discuss the street litter problem in the city, explosion of plastic trash both in the city and nationally and internationally, talk about the environmental risks of plastic, and then finally talk about the Litter-Free Philly campaign and our initial steps to tackle single-use plastic as part of an overall program to focus attention and action on reducing litter in the city of Philadelphia. This map shows the litter index prepared by the city in 2018, and there'll be a new one released in 2019. The red areas show the high levels of litter index based upon visual surveys of the entire city block by block. The green areas indicate the relatively low levels of street litter, and the yellow and orange indicate the intermediary levels. So you can see we have plenty of areas in the city with very high levels, and those areas with in the orange that's higher than we'd like to see them. Now, big bellies are an important part of handling street litter. The problem is, in many areas, they seem to be a magnet for people who have excess household trash to drop that trash off, which presents serious problems to the city in dealing with trash collection. Now, tires are another problem in the city. Various areas, people will dump their tires on streets, and the streets department cannot pick up and mix street tires in with residential trash. So this is a challenge that the city faces on a daily basis. Mattresses are another problem. Mattresses that are left out for collection on trash day are not picked up if they do not have the proper bed bug wrapping. People seem to be unaware of that in some areas, and the streets department trucks do not pick up that trash, so that we find there are areas of the city with a serious accumulation. Now, the city does have 6 sanitation convenience centers located throughout the city. These are areas where residents can drop off household trash, mattresses, old furniture, appliances, TVs, tires, yard waste. These are really important resources which city residents need to use to avoid dumping tires, mattresses, and so forth on our city streets. Now, there's been a real explosion of plastic trash, both locally and nationally, which has presented problems to us that we need to begin to understand and address. Typically, we all know that trash is part of our everyday life, whether it's the kitchen trash bag or the big black bags that we put out. Municipal solid waste has increased dramatically in the United States since 1960. In 1960, we had about 80 million tons of municipal solid waste. Today, as of 2015, we had 260 million tons a day. That's been a 2% per year increase, been relatively constant from year to year. Now, a big shift has occurred in our use of trash. Just simply take the simple coffee cup. In the past, people drank their cup of coffee out of a mug, washed that cup, and reused it over and over again. As we have an on-the-go society with convenience as a major item, we've shifted to polystyrofoam cups with plastic lids. We have a stirrer. We have a creamer. You can see we have this increase in disposable trash compared to the reuse of the coffee cup. Similarly with coffee pots, the move to single-use coffee in plastic containers, pods, has just really increased the level of trash compared to the old coffee pot model. Now, much of our convenience food comes in plastic wrapping, which again presents a challenge for our big bellies in And in those areas where we don't have big bellies or wire baskets, unfortunately, way too much of our trash, convenience food related trash, winds up on the street. Now, as individuals at the national level, our trash generation has increased dramatically from 2.7 pounds per person per day to 4.5, which is essentially a 75% increase in 50 years. Let me repeat that. That's 4.5 pounds of trash per day per person. That's 1,600 pounds per year, or 0.8 of a ton per person per year of municipal solid waste. Now, the nature of our solid waste is also changing. This chart shows the paper and paperboard at about 30 million tons in 1960. It peaked at 90 tons per year in 2000, and is actually the amount of municipal paper waste has actually been dropping off. On the other hand, plastic, which had essentially no contribution to municipal solid waste in 1960, has increased dramatically to 35 million tons today. And if we continue these trends, it's very likely that plastic could catch up and possibly overtake paper in the distant future. This chart shows the types of the types of trash that have been increasing. Those are shown in red, with plastic being the leader. Metals are increasing. Wood, rubber, and leather, and so forth have all been increasing. And these other products in blue are the ones where they are increasing but at a lower rate, with glass at the bottom increasing at a rate of 1% per year. So the mix of our trash is clearly changing over time. Now, what question then becomes, well, what do we do with this trash? How do we dispose of all this municipal solid waste? At the national level, about 50% goes to landfills, 25% goes to recycling, composting 9%, and combustion and energy recovery is 12%. But things are changing there as well. China has banned the import of plastic, which really is dramatically affecting the recycling market in the U.S. and in other countries across the world. And the presence of plastic has presented some challenges in the landfill and incineration areas, so that we really have changing disposal situation because of the changing nature of our trash. Now, what we'd like to do is spend some time on discussing the environmental risks of plastic. It's a wonderful product. There are many things we need to use plastic for. However, like a lot of other products, it can have its downside. So let's talk about the environmental risks of some other products over time that we didn't know they were a problem in the beginning, but we learned later, in fact, presented some real serious problems. Lead, very, very well known by most people. Lead is a material that can cause brain damage, whether it's lead from lead-based paints. Lead was in gasoline at one point. Lead has been used as a material for lots of purposes. But as we've moved on and we've learned that lead is like a lot of other materials, we have to be very cautious. Radiation is a wonderful product that we need, but radiation can cause cancer. Asbestos is another example, very important for fighting and insulating and fire protection. Smoking, all these other examples, including fossil fuels. In the beginning, these products were very, very important. They had lots of benefits. It's only later that we discovered that there were, in fact, downsides to some of these products. So we simply didn't know. Now today, we have a lot of concern about plastic in the ocean, and we've begun to realize the environmental risks of plastic. A couple of key points. Plastic lasts forever. It's accumulating in the environment. We see it in birds and fish, wildlife, and now we're beginning to understand that it's actually in humans as well. And that single-use plastic is actually a dangerous So we've really got to open our eyes up to the shift in the type of trash we have and in the impact of that trash on our health, both at a local level and also globally. Now, how does that get into the ocean? How does street litter connect with the ocean? Well, this happens to be a photo taken on a Philadelphia city street at a stormwater inlet, and you can see clearly there's plastic cups, there's bags, there's straws. That material during stormwater events can make its way to the creek. This happens to be the Frankfort Creek. This is the Tacony Creek. You can see the plastic bags. So stormwater will carry our street litter to our creeks and rivers and then eventually to the ocean. So as we have learned from previous environmental crises, in the beginning there's a stage where we're ignorant of the problem. We've got this new discovery, whether it's the use of lead, radiation, asbestos. As time goes on, we begin to see through scientific studies early concerns about, is this really a safe material? Are there concerns about it? We find that there's a resistance period where the manufacturers are resisting any concerns because they have an economic stake in it. Eventually we have overwhelming evidence, and then finally action is taken. With plastic, today we can say that we are at the overwhelming evidence stage. We've got a lot of evidence of the negative effects of plastic on our oceans, on our rivers, and our streets. So this is now where the Litter Free Philly campaign comes in. We really are interested in understanding the risks and dangers of plastic from an environmental standpoint and begin the process of taking action locally and eventually at a national level. So far, these are the sponsoring organizations that have signed on to be partners in this collaboration toward litter-free Philly. Now, where to start? Obviously, plastic pollution is a gigantic problem. It's going to take all of us a long time to begin to solve the problem. So where do we start and what do we do? Litter-free Philly has committed to working on reducing single-use plastics as our initial effort, going after shopping bags, utensils, takeout containers, and straws. This spring, we're working with City Council, Philadelphia City Council, to begin to get legislation to encourage reusable bags and to reduce our usage of single-use plastic. Why go after plastic bags? Well, all of us use plastic bags. They're ubiquitous. We see them all over the place. Unfortunately, while they are a convenience to carry our materials home from the grocery store, we also see them where we don't want them. Now, there's a false economics associated with plastic bags that we'd like to talk about. Retailers pay about 4 cents per bag for these plastic bags. They provide them for free, notice in quotes, free to the customer. Unfortunately, they're really not free when you look at what it costs the city or neighborhood groups or others to pick up the trash litter that strews our areas from these loose plastic bags. So if we take an individual at $15 an hour, if they were to pick up 100 bags an hour, that's 15 cents per bag. Clearly, while it may appear to be free to the individual when they're getting it at the grocery store, the consequences for the city as a whole, the country, is these are simply not free bags. Who's responsible? The manufacturer, the retailer, the consumer, and the city all play a role and all have to contribute to solving the problem with plastic bags and with the other single-use plastics that we're trying to deal with. Now, why focus on single-use plastic bags? Well, we have clear evidence that they harm wildlife. They're a major litter problem. They do not biodegrade, and they are made from non-renewable fossil fuels. So what we ask you today to join us in this effort to begin to move toward a litter-free Philly and help us in the campaign to first go after single-use plastic bags and eventually after other single-use plastic so that we can in fact free our streets of litter and reduce the environmental risks associated with plastic pollution. Thank you.